Every day I search in spite of me. Every day I search for what I cannot see. Every day I search for you. Every day I search for the truth.
And we are fully live now. Except for Pastor Bill, who is still having mic issues.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Church Online, the Ephesian House. Glad you've joined us. So, yeah. How was your week, Nooms?
It was pretty good. Are you sure your mic is coming through your mic? Is your mic coming through your mic?
And where did your audio go?
I don't know. Is your mic coming through your mic?
I bet you're trying it about my microphone too, huh?
Yeah. I see my stuff. You sound muffled. And I checked it. So everyone on the stream got to see me check it. They got to see my...
Settings are wrong. 1 second.
They got to see my stuff flickering and your stuff's just going... That's my imitation of a line, everyone. Yep. You need to put that away. Do not stick your tongue out.
When I connected my Bluetooth headphones to my laptop, it overrode my microphone.
Uh-oh.
And Teams does not like to run well.
That's Finnick. I heard a Finnick.
Okay, now the microphone's on.
I can't hear you just now. I know hear you. Nope.
Now I'm getting audio from you.
And now I'm getting audio from you.
Okay. What'd you say, Roxanne? There's a pointer on my face, my wife says.
Yes, there was. Now there's not.
Oh, that delay's real nice and short. You said that, and then I heard it come from her phone just like right away.
See what she says about that. Okay.
Don't give her reason to come back in here.
I might or might not have just like circled your face like a whole bunch of times and clicked on your forehead for the fun of it.
Like, I'm just telling people what to look at. Look right here.
Don't look at this. Look at that. Don't look at this.
So you're looking away from your camera. You do realize that, right? Like, you're not even looking. There you go. There's your pretty fast.
So like, I have to remember to look here instead of looking there, and
yeah,
it's the opposite of how my setup at home is, because at home my camera is right in front of me, but tonight I'm on just a desk, and so it's just a little complicated, and I don't want to.
Well, on my screen, when I'm looking at you on our Teams conversation, on my screen, you are over here.
Yeah.
And I am here, and the camera's over here. And so I have to more or less stare at myself and try to remember to look at the camera, because if I look at you, then I'm looking off to this side like this the whole time.
I basically have to look at my wife for me to look at the camera. Because Tina is right next to the camera, and she's doing things like this.
You chose to marry her, man. I mean, if you got a problem with looking at your wife, then that's your problem.
But here's the funniest thing. You want to know where my drink has to sit right now? You ready? Because that's the open spot on the table.
Fun.
But once we have fewer people, I'll move back into where I was over the last week or so. But because we have my in-laws in town, so you asked how my week was. So
yeah, I saw you on Wednesday, and then
yep. So saw you on Wednesday. We went out to eat as a final at my favorite restaurant in North Richland Hills, which I will miss, but it's okay. Thursday we packed the truck. Mr. James, who you guys have seen on certain of the streams and stuff, and sadly is not in my house like he normally is during these nights.
Well, he's not even in the same state with you now.
No, he is not. And so we packed the truck on Thursday, and he helped. Friday, we drove to Tennessee. We got in about midnight on Friday. Saturday, we unpacked the trailer into the storage because our house closing is on the 29th. My in-laws helped and came. And so right now in this house, we have 3 families. We have my parents that live here. We have my family, which is 4 of us. And right now my 2 in-laws are here, but they're staying at a hotel at night. They're just here for the moment. And then they leave on Tuesday. And then, but we were able to go see the house today, and they are making progress in moving out, which is good because you would hope us could see the house before they leave. And our realtor was like, "Well, they said that we can, but it's not show ready because they're in the process of moving out." And my response was, of course, "Well, I hope so." Because
like, show ready, we already bought it. I don't know what you're trying to prove.
If the house isn't being packed up, we got 2 weeks, and I'm not sure how you're going to pull it off. To which our realtor told us a story about how he walked into a house the day of the walkthrough, which is the day before closing, and they hadn't packed anything. And he was like, "I don't know how this," and then they had like a bunch of people come and it was all gone the next day, but they literally lived in the house till the day before closing. Yeah, and I'm like, I can't deal with that much stress in life. There's no way.
Right? Talk about cutting it close.
But another thing I did over the last week was I combined my Facebooks. Now I have one Facebook. It is Nooms Holding. And then my Pastor Nooms, my Ecclesian House, and my Master Nooms, which is my gaming profiles, are all under one profile as opposed to... no, I can't hear you now. It just went out. Did your earbuds die? Your ears died? Did we bury them? Bad sign language. Fair warning, I haven't done it in 20 years much. So if anyone's out there watching, don't judge me for my sign language. I know I'm crazy. It's okay. We're fine.
All right, so Teams crashed
Bill,
on my computer.
Hear me?
So I have to go restart Teams.
Bill? You gotta restart Teams? I'm sorry. I can hear you through whatever medium you just changed.
Well, it's through my phone now. I just unmuted my phone and turned on the microphone on my phone so you could hear me.
It doesn't sound bad, and I'm not getting a reverb.
Say what?
It doesn't sound bad, and I'm not getting a reverb.
The problem is I can't hear you. If I turn you on, then we'll get
Yep.
echo.
Yep. That's okay. I'll talk some more about things that you do know.
So you're still talking, but I just told you I can't hear you?
I know. I'm talking to
I have
them.
no idea what you're saying.
I'm talking to them. I'm talking to them,
talking
not
to them?
you. Yeah. Just so we're not dead.
Okay.
So there's actual talking. You're not important right now.
Right. So, but on Podbean, we're still going on Podbean. But...
Yeah, on Podbean they can hear you, but you can't hear you. So I'm just talking to the crowd. So.
Right. And you said we went live through Okay, there we go.
So sorry, we're having some technical difficulties today on both ends. It happens.
Yeah, we are. I can catch like every third word that you say through the little microphone, the little speakers on my phone.
So we're sorry, guys.
Difficulties.
This happens. This is the thing about church online. We're not perfect, and so you cannot have another ice cream sandwich. Podbean, she's eating too many ice cream sandwiches.
I suspect Teams heard what I was saying about it not wanting to run right, and it was like, I'll show you who won't run right, and just crashed.
Guys, really? You're gonna have an argument in the kitchen? But mine was Playful Banner.
So before my Teams went down, I was about to show you my coffee cup, and I was gonna be like, it's official, you're awesome, and then my Teams went down, and I was all distracted.
Oh, and since he actually can't see me right now.
Oh, I can see you on my phone.
Oh, okay. Oh.
I just can't hear you. Except for a very faint,
Maybe if I yell. I wouldn't do that to you guys in the audience. I'm sorry. I would never yell at you guys like that. That's just not nice.
I'm not sure what's going on with teens, but okay. So this week, this week's podcast, we were talking about self-love, and I brought up the issue about when you talk about self-love, when you talk about Mark 12:31. Yes, I see your ice cream sandwich news. I see it. We bring up 12:31, and you say, "Love your neighbor as yourself," and you say that means that you first have to love yourself so that you can then love your neighbor. We get pushback on that from people who talked about, well, all humanity knows how to do is love itself, and so you're wrong, and that's not sound doctrine, so you're wrong, and things like this. And I'm like,
Can you hear me yet or no?
I mean, you're still just that really soft
Okay.
voice on my phone.
So, and as you know, and those of you can hear me crisply, so I don't have to. You know what I'm about to say. I've always, throughout my entire life, had issue with that verse. I've always, throughout my entire life, had issue with that verse because of the whole you have to love yourself first. So if you hate yourself, does that mean I'm allowed to hate everyone? You have this, subculture of people who don't like themselves, don't love themselves. What does that verse mean to them? And that's the kind of thing you're talking about. And when I was in school and stuff, I'd bring that up. Well, does that mean I get to hate you because I don't like me? And it's like, well, no, that's not what that verse means. Well, then you tell me what it means. Well, it means you should love me how you should love you. Are you sure? It's not what the verse says. But like you said, when you look at the true Hebrew and stuff, is when what you're about to say, because you're about to say it.
Right. So when we go back and we look at the words that are actually being used, as far as love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. That word love is the word agapao, which most people have heard of the word agape, which is the generic starter of the word love. And then in Greek, it goes 7 different directions. And so whenever you're reading the New Testament and you come across the word love, just the generic word for love, it's unfortunately going to be one of then 8 different words.
Mm-hmm.
And
Now
I
I
can hear myself twice, but that's fine. I'll deal with that here in a second. So you got to figure out which of those 8 words that it is. Are we talking about the generic first version of the word love, agape? Are we talking about agapao? Are we talking about then philos or philatos, or all these different words that describe the love relationship? Is my audio twice for you two as right now? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and fix the phone.
You sound like the booming voice because it comes like, a millisecond around each other. And so it's, listen to me,
Sorry, guys. I didn't realize you were hearing me twice, too.
Well, that's why I was like, okay, it'll be fine. He's going to fix it in a second. He's not fixing it. Okay, I'm going to say.
Well, I was trying to fix it on the laptop, Okay, so everything's running back the way it's supposed to be running. So,
Yay!
Okay. So in Mark 12, when Jesus tells us to love God and to love our neighbor as ourselves, and then we say, well, that second half there is actually 2 separate commandments: to love yourself and then love your neighbor like that, the same, with that same love. And so, like you're talking about, and there's a huge, it's not, I wouldn't call it a subculture. It is a subculture, but it's so large that it's almost at the point that calling it a subculture isn't doing it justice.
I'll agree.
Right?
I'll agree.
So a subculture is like, for instance, emo kids. If you want to call emo kids a culture, then the subculture of emo kids would be the ones wearing JNCOs. And so it kind of downplays the importance of what a subculture is, right? Okay, my reference is dated. Gosh. when I was in Thailand in '97. Jinkos were a big thing, right? And in Thailand in '97, we went to this mall, and you can buy almost any knockoff item of clothing you want in Thailand. And they had these knockoff Jinkos called Kinkos. So that was fun.
No, with the K.
Mm-hmm.
No,
Yeah.
no. Now, typically, people who wear Jinkos are Kinkos, but you can't tell them that. Like,
You can't tell them.
and someone
I don't know why
someone
I thought you were gonna refrain from that.
someone
but-
out there at me that I'm wrong, and prove it, because you can't.
You're like, am I wrong?
Like, just saying, sorry. But no, but it
Okay.
is so important, because when we look at ourselves, especially those of us that struggle with it, I don't love myself. How can I love someone else? And like, in the past especially, I say hate way too much. And I'll be like, well, I hate people. And like, one of my girls called me out on it. They were like, you don't hate people, you talk to everyone. It doesn't mean I like them, it just means I'm social. I'm respectful, I'm nice. And they're like, but you can't hate them then, and God says you love them, and so you do. And I'm like, yeah, but I words are complicated, y'all. Sit down. Like, because it is. I mean, that's the problem with those kind of words. When you deal with love and hate, and they have depth that doesn't translate into English well. And so we have to be so careful when we're studying the scriptures, because English is a limited, crappy, garbage language. But it's what we're stuck with. It's what we learned.
Yeah, so when you put verses like Mark 12:31, love your neighbor as yourself, up against 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 2, for people will be lovers of self, you get this idea that these must be the same thing, right? Because it's the same English word, love your neighbor and lovers of self, except they're not. They're not the same English word. If you're trying to make a lazy translation, or not really lazy, but if you're trying to be accurate and just use one word where they used one word, then it's close to right. But if you're trying to make a translation that is comprehensive instead, then there should be some description there of what you're talking about. And even the translation we're using, this is the CSB, it tries to be even more comprehensive than, say, the King James did, because the King James was trying to make a epic work of poetry, but even then, they're still trying to make a word for word translation instead of something that preaches what's going on behind the scenes. So it's up to you as a Christian, it's up to you as the Bible reader to dig a little deeper into those scriptures and find out, well, what words are being used here and what message does the scripture actually bring me? Because in lovers of self, we would understand that more as the word selfish.
Yeah.
Not really the same concept as agapao, which Jesus used, which was to love in a social or moral sense, right?
Right.
And in the podcast, I kind of broke it down, and I said, well,
Kind of.
I read what... No, I definitely broke it down. I read what James Strong wrote about the difference between those two words. And interestingly enough, I had to go to a third word definition to find where he wrote that about those other two words. And I was like, why are we burying the lead here, James? This is crazy. But so basically
because he's expecting you to dig. Like,
James
this is the root of
James
this.
Strong.
Yeah, this is the root, so you should always look at the root, and I put the explanation there. But those of us that are even looking at it normally, we look at it, we go, okay, makes sense, and, reclose the book that's this big, when you actually have the book. And, yeah.
Okay. So, Jonathan, you and I, Nooms, sorry.
It's fine.
You and I met
Oh,
Coon's
two.
age ago. It was a long time ago.
Oh, two.
18 years ago.
Yep.
Right. And then that next summer, I met your sister, not knowing she was your sister because I'm not a name person. I'm a face person. Like,
And
I knew your first name, but I didn't know your last name.
and you didn't
right?
even know my first name. You knew Nooms.
No, I knew.
Oh, you,
I knew. Oh, I knew Nooms. Yeah, I didn't
yeah.
even know.
You didn't even know Jonathan.
Right. Okay. So then your sister's like, "Hey, Bill, there's this. You got to meet my brother. You're gonna get along great with my brother. This is awesome." And then she comes to you and she says, "What?"
I met this guy. He's gonna be your best friend forever. He's the greatest guy I've ever met. He fits you so well.
I love this
Okay.
story.
And when she then arranged the time for us to meet, and I saw you and you saw me, what happened?
Bill!
Nooms. Okay.
And then
That-
Heather went, oh.
Right. Not Heather's response, but us,
Yeah.
the interaction that we had in that moment, that's agapao.
Yeah.
That's what that is. That's that close-knit tie reaction that we had this soul tie that connected this deep friendship.
Yep.
That when I saw you, my instinct was to yell out Nooms, and your instinct was to yell out Bill. That's what agapao is. That's what Jesus is talking
Yeah.
about when he says love your neighbor as yourself. He's saying when you get up and you see your neighbor, you should have this emotional response that you go, oh, my neighbor. And you should have that same response when you get up and you see yourself in the mirror in the morning. You should get up and you should see yourself in the mirror and you should be like, hot griddles on a hot pancakes on a griddle. I'm trying to make up colloquialisms over here, all right? I'm trying to make up colloquialisms. Hot pancakes on a griddle. You don't like that? Hot sizzling bacon on a griddle.
Now I just don't like the idea because I don't do that. I leave the mirror nice and fogged up after getting out of the shower and I don't look at it.
But the point
Yes, I know.
is to get yourself to the place where you're healthy enough emotionally, healthy enough in your psyche, healthy enough that when you do wake up and you look at yourself, you do love yourself like that. And then moving forward, right? Okay. Nooms, for a long time, what was I allergic to?
Pepper.
Black pepper. And would you let me eat black pepper?
Had you made me mad that day?
No.
Then no, of course not.
Right.
No,
Because you
I protected you
me.
from black pepper.
Right, because you agapao me,
Yeah.
right? So if I love myself, if I agapao myself, then I'm going to make wise decisions in what I eat. I'm going to make wise decisions in what I drink. I'm
And-
going to make wise decisions in...
Side note, are you trying to explain this to the person who's got his foot in ice water because he's having a gout flare because he ate the things he wasn't supposed to eat? Just asking for a friend.
No.
Oh, okay, cool. We're talking to other people right now? Great.
Talking to other people because you got your own stuff to deal with. and
Got
if
you.
have
Cool.
to glean some lessons from this podcast, then that's cool. But I'm thinking about a wider audience
Got
when
you.
I'm writing these.
Okay, cool. That sounds great. I agree with you. And no, your point is valid, and this is a discussion that me and you have had for years and years. And me and my wife have on a daily basis of, even my wife says, I love you. And I say, no, you don't. Because in my mind, there's no reason to. And so it's a struggle that, and my wife who...
Because you don't love yourself, so you
Right.
can't imagine how someone could love you.
And like my wife who has talked on the podcast before, so I'm not doing anything I shouldn't do here, who has struggled with depression and still does, I'll say, you look cute today, and she'll go, "Pah," and walk away, and you're like, I'm sorry, my opinion matters more than yours does in this. I have the eyes, and beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, not you. I don't care what
Beauty is in the eyes of my holder.
my holders. I'm the beholder here. So, not the big beholders that are in D&D with the thousands of eyes, because we don't ever want to be the beauty in their eyes. But that's beside the point. Sorry, I've been doing some research for a thing recently, so I'm not on my meds. I'm rabbit
like
trailing.
the fallen angel in Pan's Labyrinth, and he's all like, rah.
Yeah, and
Opens his wings. He's like, rah.
yeah, and the dude on the same director, so the dude on Hellboy, you know, where he's like, "Hi," you're like, "No, no hi, go away, you're creepy."
You're like, no, no, I'm gonna go over here now.
There were no mirrors in his
can,
place for a reason, but we have to continue to work towards moving back to Tennessee. Is weird. So like, I pull into my parents' neighborhood, and they're in a 55 up community, and every single person you see, every single one of them, waves. They don't know me from Adam.
It's like you're out in Wise County,
Yeah.
where I live.
And then I pulled into the
waves.
neighborhood.
You driving down the road, like, hey, and I'm like, hey.
I don't know these people. I drove into the neighborhood that I'm about to, we close in 2 weeks. I'm driving through there showing them, and as we're driving through showing my in-laws, everyone's like, "Hey, how you doing? Hey, how you doing? Hey, how you doing?" And I'm like, But to be honest, as we both know, I'll get right back into it, but it's that you have to show love to your neighbors, even, because it is so important. We can't be a witness if we don't love our neighbors, more than any other reason. And that
loving your neighbors starts with loving yourself.
Or it forces you to, one or the other.
Everything in good theology, everything in holy theology, everything in true religion starts in the home and in the heart, and then expands from there.
Yeah.
Right?
Not a rule.
It doesn't start on the street corner. It doesn't start in the church pulpit. It starts in the home and in the heart, and then expands from there. And so, what Jesus is saying is the same thing about the speck in your brother's eye and the log in your own, right? He's like, don't be going and pointing out the log in your brother's eye until you're first aware of the log in your eye and working to take it out. And if you're working together to get both your logs out, cool. But don't be standing on the corner going, "Hey, you've got a log in your eye. You've got a log in your," you know what I mean? Because it's a log in your own eye too, brother.
There are definitely aspects of that we always have to watch out for, because there's a difference between street preaching and there's a difference between street ministry, street preaching, and just being an angry person.
We've both done street ministry, right? You in Botswana?
South Africa.
South Africa.
Yeah.
Me in Mexico, Thailand, Haiti, Panama, India, Guatemala, El Salvador.
Show off.
United States.
I've also done it in Deep Ellum. I've done it in, a couple of places here in the States as well. But I'm more of the friendship evangelism type than I am the street preaching, just because you were on mission trips doing different things. Now, there is the aspect also of street preaching that is actual. There are street preachers that are out there.
Street preaching. There really is.
There is.
But there's a lot of street preaching that isn't.
And then there's just street hating is a good way of saying it. It's just standing on a soapbox and spewing hate, sadly. And that is typically what, sadly, we see and what a lot of people think of. They don't think of the street preaching that is valid or the street ministry if you're not a Christian. Then, sadly, a lot of Christians, when you say street preaching, they imagine the correct kind. They forget about the kind that people that are not, the street hatred. And so we have to work together as the church to make sure we're doing it the correct way. And we are always going to have people who aren't. And as it talks about in your second passage, we are going to have people who think they are and aren't, as your next points are. And I love steamrolling your points, but I'll let you get to them.
Yeah, so 2 Timothy chapter 3 verses 1 through 5. A lot of people like to read this. They like to tout it out and hold it up as, look how ungodly the world is going to be. and it is. It's really, this is a pretty, and I'm going to use the word damning. It's a pretty damning accusation.
Yeah.
And I want to use that in the right context. You know, I'm not just swearing to swear. This is a pretty bad thing.
It's
to
straight
say.
calling them godless. I mean,
It really is. And so I'm just going to read it. 2 Timothy chapter 3, and like people like to read 1 through 4, but then the end of verse 4 ends on a comma. You know what a comma means? A comma means keep reading. Right. So it says, but know
PSA.
this, hard times will come in the last days. For people will be lovers of self, lovers of money, which lovers of self is selfish. Lovers of money is greed, if you really want to boil down to a modern English word. They're selfish, they're greedy, boastful, proud, demeaning, disobedient to parents, ungrateful, unholy, unloving, irreconcilable, slanderers, without self-control, brutal, without love for what is good, traitors, reckless, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God. And that's where most people like to stop reading there at that comma. But then we get to the actual damning part. It says, holding to the form of godliness, but denying its power.
Yeah.
Avoid these people. Paul is warning Timothy about traits to look out for amongst Christians within the church,
or
in the end days.
Or another way of saying that is people in the church that either think or act like Christians, not because it's that whole fruit of the Spirit. If you look, those are opposite of the fruits. So he's saying that you're going to have people infiltrate your church that are not. They're there for one of two reasons. Either one,
and not necessarily, well, could be, I don't know what your two things are, but we have to bring up also, there could be people in the church that think they are Christians.
Right. So there's three.
That these are Christian, theological concepts that they're upholding, which end up actually being these things. Okay, now
what I was saying was they're either going to be, people who are faking it on purpose to make it, I'm here, I'm a Christian, and then being subversive on purpose, because sadly there are people who do that. And two, people who think that they are and aren't. But then there is the third, the people who think they are, think they're doing the correct thing, think that they have everything right, and aren't. And
I love scrolling through TikTok and finding testimonies. Like there's this guy in Canada that he makes really great preaching TikToks. He was an atheist, and he had this hatred for Christians, not because he hated God, but because he truly honestly believed that Christians were leading people astray in order to steal their money. And so his goal, he would go from church service to church service to debate the pastor in the middle of service to try to turn people off of Christianity, and had some success. And he got to this one church that he'd never been to before, and the Holy Spirit kicked his butt, and he had an encounter with the Holy Spirit and got saved. And I love like that, like I was gonna go and prove God wrong, and God met me, and
because it's one of those things where
I saw one this.
Go ahead.
I saw a TikTok last week where this girl was like, yeah, so I was a hardcore atheist when coronavirus lockdown started, and I was going to read up on some stuff to, and got saved during my research. And oops.
And that happens a lot. And it's like we kind of had a discussion, one day about, there are these people who sadly have had encounters only with people who are Christians in name only, not in faith or fruit. Abusive parents, abusive people in schools. One of the most famous that I know of is Marilyn Manson, who hates Christians because he went to a Christian school and was bullied, and so he thinks that's what Christianity is, and so he hates it.
Well, I
And
mean, and his father was a Baptist minister for a while, so he's
Right.
got the whole,
and so it's
harshness of his father pushing
Yeah.
him too.
And so it's this whole, you have these people that have had terrible encounters with parts of Christianity and sadly have never had an encounter with God. Because they
Right.
themselves away from actually even trying to look. And,
And that's the church's fault. That's our fault.
yeah, it is.
We're embracing
Sorry.
other theologies
Yeah.
and ignoring love. We're supposed to be loving as our first commandment, as our first goal, as our first anything, our first go-to should be to love each other, to love the lost, and that's just not what most of what's considered sound theology teaches, which is quite frustrating.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And yeah, wait a few minutes and we'll get something. Sorry, my daughter just came into the kitchen and is like, I'm hungry. Well, you're gonna have to wait a minute.
Don't you know you're live?
They do, but it's rough. They just came back from a walk, and so they are now like, ooh, now I'm hungry. I didn't eat dinner because I wasn't hungry, but now I'm hungry. It's like, well, now you
And
gotta
also,
wait.
you're not where they have been living,
Yeah.
and they've been gone with the grandparents in Arizona for a while.
And I'm literally
so-
looking at the pantry, things like that.
Yeah, you're looking at the pantry and talking.
Which makes me hungry because it's right behind the camera and there's a bunch of stuff I can't have, but I want it.
So we see the fulfillment of Paul's warning all around us.
Yes.
And I see it not only in the world, in the unsaved, in the lost, I also see it in Christians. Maybe not so much to the extent that Paul warns about, which I guess is a good sign that we've got some more time before the end comes. But yeah, so I was gonna bring up, you said something and it reminded me of something. Anyway, something about Christians in name only, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the term Christian is only found 3 times in the New Testament. Okay, and it's never a word that's used by a follower of Christ. It's always used by someone outside the church talking about those in the church. And historically, it was an insult that was applied to the followers of the way. It means little Christ or abbreviated Christ, or, it's an insult. And then at some point we decided we were going to own it. And
It's one of those where it's like, you're a little Christ. You're a little Christ. Wait, that kind of is the goal.
I ain't
I'll take
Christ
it.
is greater than I am, and I want to be like Christ, so I guess I'm a little Christ.
I'm working on it daily to try to get closer. Cool. Yeah, sounds great.
But yeah, I was talking to somebody about that the other day. A member of the I didn't want to use the word Mormon, but now I can't remember the whole title thing. I was talking to a Mormon,
Yeah.
and he was like, "We don't want to be called Mormons. We don't worship Mormon." And I was like, I mean, it's printed on your book. It's kind of hard to get around not being called it when it's literally printed on the book that you're telling everybody they should read. And he was like, yeah, but we're Christians just like you. He said, Mormons, it's an insult. And I was like, but the word Christian is an insult. It started as an insult. And
Yeah.
it's amazing to me how many people just don't care to find out the history of anything. They just go through life and they're like, me, I'm always going, hey Siri, what's the etymology of the word pickle? And things like that. I'm just always trying to figure out the history of things because, like,
Why did you
where
just
does the
pick
word
pickle?
come from? It's the first word that popped in my mind. Oh, you know what? The other day I asked Siri what the etymology was of the word gherkin.
What is a gherkin?
It's a pickle.
Oh, a type of pickle. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
Go back to
So-
coloring.
You're
I'm
so
not coloring.
mean.
Tina is.
You be mean to your wife. Don't be mean to your wife.
Just a little. Poquito.
Just
Don't
a little.
start with me.
Yeah. So, I guess this is a point where we get to talk about just some crazy stuff going on this week and last week.
Just this week and last week.
Yeah,
Riots and
there have been.
protesting and
And we kind of touched on it a little bit in our discussion last week, not in the podcast because,
Little
of course,
bit.
the podcast comes out before the discussion. And we mainly
Right.
talked about it as, alarms were going off and as, Dallas was in a, curfew and things like that. But, it definitely has, we have a whole couple city block that's been taken over by, a group that claim to be we got a lot going on in the world right now. And then we got a lot, and the worst part is we got a lot going on in the world, but because of everything going on in America, we keep forgetting. Like there's like whole groups of people that are like forgetting Corona exists, and then like I'm feeling sick, and you're like, well,
the infection numbers for the state of Arizona have tripled
yeah, it's
recently.
it's kind of interesting. And then I guess the cicadas are coming really just like right around the corner.
We've got
Right.
we've got the 17-year and the 13-year cicadas are both coming out somehow during the same year. And so we're going to have twice as many cicadas this year as
Yeah, and that's I
we've
guess
had in the
already
past.
started in some places.
I would imagine so.
From what
yeah.
I understand, and so, I mean, just crazy stuff going on. Like you mentioned, it's weird. It's real weird. Everything going on right now.
I saw there were some riots in London. The same Black Lives Matter thing has cropped up in London, where I thought they had a different dynamic already and that it was better there, but I guess
Well, again,
I don't know. I guess I'm ignorant about the finer points of
yeah.
London culture.
The problem
I
is
thought they
is racism exists everywhere, sadly, and there's very few places that have fully eradicated it. And it's hard, even in cultures. You're like the Asian culture, depending on how light or dark you are, is important. The Indian culture, depending on how light or dark you are, in the same culture, is extremely important. Like it was a big deal at one point because when I was friends with when I was worked with a bunch of guys from India, the person who won the Indian Miss India, the Indian Miss America, that doesn't work. Was
actually I would believe they would put on something like that.
yeah.
The Indian, I believe they would. When you go to a place like India and they're like, "Hi, my name's Chad," and you're like, "Is it really though?"
So like a light-skinned person won, and it was a big deal because a light-skinned person hadn't, because that's not their ideal form of beauty. And so it's sadly something that happens, and the problem is we forget the love part. It's kind of like what you used part of one of Dr. King's messages or statements. I don't know where exactly you pulled it from, whether it was a message or a protest statement or because his kind of
It's
since
the end of a speech at a protest.
since he was a reverend, it kind of always did blur. As a Christian reverend doing protests, the lines blur on am I preaching or am I speaking? And
Right.
that is okay. I mean, it's normal. And you used him in the podcast talking about the part where that's a commonly used one where we need to stop thinking about this matters or this has supremacy or this has supremacy. That's not what's important. What's important is God has the supremacy. And until we get to that point, this point is always going to be a problem. And that's the biggest problem is unless you truly are showing people the love of God, you are going to be some form of ist if you're not loving your neighbor and loving how God loves us, when you're just trying to do your own thing, the love of God is what's got to be the most important thing. And until it is, we're always going to have these issues, sadly.
Yeah.
Now, granted, it might not be as systemic as, we can always work towards, ending some of the systemic aspects, whether or not you believe it's systemic, because I had a conversation with someone this week who said it's not systemic, and I'm like, well, it happens more than once in multiple areas, so it can't be a one-off. That's not how one-offs work. But
Right. If it happens in one city once, that's a one-off.
yeah,
If it happens in 5 cities, thousands of miles away from each other, that's systemic.
and then when it happens more and more and more, and the problem is everyone keeps talking about it's happening more, it's happening more, it's happening more. It's not. It's not happening more. It's being recorded more, and we as a whole culture are seeing what has been systemic, and we didn't know it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is, like,
And we're gonna see that a lot, like the number of people who are homosexual or other sexually oriented. There was this thought for a decade or two that, well, why are more people being this way? And it is true that we have seen some increase in numbers of that lifestyle and that culture, but not to the point that people were freaking out about it. It's the fact that, well, these people were already here, but we've got better access to technology and better access to information, and so we're noticing it more.
and people aren't as
when
hidden.
Right, they don't have to hide as much.
You can't hide it by, like, someone released one of the TikToks I saw, and it was the Jedi Council. And the Jedi Council was like, it's been decided that all 216 younglings fell upon Master Anakin's sword. And you're like, that is something I could see someone saying. Like, no, he didn't kill all of them. They fell. And that doesn't work anymore. Like, used to, that would get what was put in the report, and people would move on. Like, oh, they fell. Okay, they must have fell. It's what it says.
He fell into his billy club 7 times.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. He did what?
Yeah. Well, I hit him once, and he fell and hit his head 3 times on the way down. And you're like...
Right.
But the thing was it was buried in paperwork. It was buried... And so we didn't, as a culture and as a nation, see it. Especially those of us with some form of privilege, whether it's a ton of privilege or a little privilege. It all depends on how you were brought up. I'm not going to argue that one way or the other. But...
I don't want to argue privilege, but
everyone
the fact that you could bury it in paperwork, and when someone came across it, they'd turn a blind eye, just proves there's a systemic issue.
Right.
There's a deeper issue that needs to be addressed. And I'm not sure that rioting is the way to address it, but it definitely got some people's attention.
Sadly, I feel terrible for the effects that it has caused, but as a culture, we weren't listening. As a whole, we weren't listening to all the other forms of protest. So at a certain point, it was going to boil over.
I think the issue with not listening to other forms of protest is there was no concerted, consistent, peaceful protest. There was this little protest over here and this little protest over here and this little protest over here, and when you look at not the issue of whether or not Black Lives Matter, but when you look at the organization of Black Lives Matter, the last time they cropped up in a big newsworthy way was in 2016.
Yeah.
And so it's been 4 years. If you only show up every 4 years, things aren't going to go back to the status quo.
And that's another issue right there. What you say is, part of this has to do with media coverage as well. How is the media showing things? Like, there have been things happening over those 4 years, but the media didn't care. And so the media didn't show it, so none of us knew about it in a full, like, nationwide side. Like, here in now Nashville, but was Dallas. I didn't know something was going on in Georgia.
I remember closer to the end of 2016, there'd be Black Lives Matter things going on, and a news crew would show up, cameras would show up, and they'd tell them to leave.
Yeah.
No, leave. We don't want you recording this. We don't want you here. And I was thinking, how are people supposed to find out the message if you're sending the people that are spreading the message away?
It's a catch-22 because the other problem comes into play when they then send the wrong message. Because the news
and they
often
misrepresent the message.
The news is known for, sadly, misrepresenting and not being true to itself, being true to whatever the beliefs of the person giving the news or writing it is.
Yeah, the news does that about everything, and it is inherent to human nature. And by human nature, I mean human fallen nature, post Adam and Eve. We have that reticular activation system, and we may not intend to go into something to spin the truth to the way we believe it. We may not intend to mislead someone, but then we do. We see things a certain way, and so we spin it. And when you have the kind of power that the news has, you have that issue. And then when you have countless news sources being owned by one organization, you have an even bigger issue. You can go on YouTube and you can look up the video of news reporter after news reporter after news reporter after news reporter, all reading from a script.
Yep.
As if they're talking genuinely about some issue, and they're all using the exact same words and phrasing.
The same
because they
teleprompters.
were written for them by the company that owns all of those news and passed it down and said, you're going to read this on camera.
Yeah, and they might not even know that's how it's happening. That's the other problem. It might not be the newscaster's problem. It might not be the...
Right, the producer hands them copy and says, this is what we need read. You know what I mean?
They are, a lot of times, not all, because some are actually journalists. Some are just newscasters. And that is sadly
something
something that
used to be journalists and then got hired by Fox News and aren't journalists anymore. Geraldo Rivera. Oh, did I forget to cough during saying it? I coughed after saying it.
Yeah, you forgot to cough during saying the whole channel, too, but we won't go into that.
My bad.
My bad. Your filtration system broke again. It's okay. We'll fix it in post. We don't do post.
We don't do post. Exactly.
We hit post. We don't do post.
We hit post. We don't do post. Yeah, we don't wear a veil over our face, Moses. Okay.
No.
So it's 7:30. I feel like every time I make that reference, nobody knows what I'm talking about.
You've talked about it enough times to where they can, and they should.
Well, if they're listening now and they haven't been listening before, Moses went up on the mountain with God, and his face glowed like the sun when he came back down, or he'd go into the tent of meeting and meet with God, and when he'd come out, his face would show like the sun. And when Moses would start to notice that his face would start to lose its glory, he would cover his face with a veil so that no one would know that the glory of God was fading from his face, and would continue to listen to what he was saying as if it was the words direct from God. And that's straight from the Bible, and it's written about in the Midrashes that you can go read from the Jewish commentaries. That's not my opinion. That is straight up a fact of biblical history. He would hide the fact that he was human from the people after he had met with God, and the glory started fading away.
Sadly, a lot of leaders do. A lot of leaders do not show their human side. They only show what they want people to see.
Right.
Like you comb your beard every time. Me, I wear a hat. I'm bald.
Time.
I
forgot to, or no, I ran out of time. I didn't get to comb my beard this time.
It's okay. You can't even see my beard half the time because I wear black shirts too. So it's just kind of like, my face goes from face to shirt, and it's like where?
It really does. Just like, I don't know where the beard ends and the shirt begins.
I really got to start wearing different shirts when we stream, but that's beside the point. I can't go buy a whole new wardrobe if we're not gonna wear black shirts on the stream.
I've got like maybe 6 polos that I rotate throughout the week. Whatever polo happens to be today, that's the polo I wear on the podcast.
We really should.
the
We really
broadcast.
should go back and look at all the podcasts and see how many times you're wearing the same polo,
We really should. I bet.
That'd
I
be
bet
funny.
it's
and just do a compilation
I don't
of
know
hello
for
and
many.
welcome. You know,
Only you.
All right, so it's 7:30. So, the podcast that just came, or the podcast that's coming out tonight, rather, I don't remember what it's called. Oh, Goat. It's the Goat.
now we're talking greatest
Which
of
is
all
actually-
time, or actually about a goat.
No, it's the greatest of all time.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the greatest of all time. And I'll let you go listen to it to find out who the greatest of all time is. But I think if you've read through the Gospels at all, then you know who it is, and I'm not talking about Jesus. So,
And we might disagree
listen
on the
to
goat
podcast-
if you're not talking about Jesus. Let's be honest.
I don't think you can disagree because it's Jesus telling us who the goat is.
I think we can.
So, you're going to disagree with Jesus then. You're not disagreeing with me, but, that's between you and Jesus, bro.
I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't say I was going
Oh.
to disagree. I said we might.
And I told you, never mind. Okay,
You drink your water.
I'm going to drink my water.
I don't have any water because
So-
my wife doesn't love me.
So that'll come out tonight, so go listen to it tomorrow.
You didn't tell me that.
And then Wednesday night, the video version of the podcast will go live, and you can find out what clothing I wore when I recorded it.
Mhm.
Because we just talked about that. But that seems to be the best time to release it, so that'll come out Wednesday night. And hopefully this evening it'll work out right with Podbean Live that I can then push this conversation as season 2 episode 81.5.
Yep.
And that'll be fun because people can then, and maybe that'll become a thing we can do moving forward. So you guys have a great week. We love you. And until next time. And now we've got a 30-second buffer.
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 I made you out of clay. Wait, that's the dreidel song. That's not the buffer song. Is there a buffer song? Do you know a buffer song?
I know songs about being buff, but I don't think they're appropriate for the discussion of the podcast.
Well, if they're not appropriate for this
Yes,
discussion, then we
are.
probably
We're
shouldn't
not.
sing them. It's,
Love you.
what are you doing?
I don't know. I'd rather be smiting.
All right. Yeah, does this say smiting? Oh, I thought it was going to say I'd rather be playing Minecraft. But, all right. So all of you on Podbean Live or listening to this in podcast form later on, we're going to sign off for you guys now. The video's got that 30-second buffer thing, so that's where we keep going. But you guys have a great week, and until next time.
Why did you look at it like I was doing?
No, we're not done here. We're just done here. You have to wait another moment. Before you yell at me for looking at you funny. And it's because of the belt buckle, to answer the question. You didn't color the belt buckle any other color other than the color that you colored the belt. Then that's fine. It weirded me out because you're coloring a belt buckle. And then all right, I'm going to hit stop on the live production.